Hello everyone, so while we answer the question of African music theory, this video will also serve as a revision of the important things that we've looked at so far on this channel. So is there such a thing as African music theory? So this is one of those yes and no type of questions. So let's open our African music theoryometer. Okay, so let's start with no, in the sense that in Africa we never saw music theory as a necessity in music making. Another reason is there are some things about African music that even if you try to theorize, there is no way to put theory into those things. So this brings some out of the box things like, you remember that thing in Xhosa music history where one person can go somewhere alone into the dark at night and then just wait for hours for the music to come to them, and when the music comes they'll just express whatever they are feeling and whatever is coming to them however they want. And I'm sure this is also how things like beatboxing came to be, because you see, no rules, no being put in a box, so we were able to do things like channel music directly from the spirit realm or dimension straight into our dimension without editing, without anything. So we definitely cannot put music theory into things like that. And also things like, you remember poking a bug and putting a bug in your mouth? So there's absolutely no structure to this kind of thing, so there is no music theory to this. And sadly, I haven't found any recordings of this, but I have found recordings of something that's a little bit different here. It comes from the Swazi, and this music is very abstract, as you can hear, but they are singing together. Which means there is some kind of structure here. Now, if we add a little bit more structure into the music, we get things like beatboxing, for a lack of a better word, and also rap or hip hop, for a lack of a better word, but not in the sense, in the way that we know it today. But long ago, this was something that was actually done by grandmas and grandpas and teachers. So what they would do is create melodic or rhythmic patterns using the words in the story or in the lesson that they want to teach, and then they would do this so that the story or lesson would be fun for the children or fun for the listeners. And this happened across Africa, but mostly it was popularized by the griots in West Africa there. And then a similar way of teaching is still used to this day in Southern African parts. Some cultures like the Venda and the Tsonga have these things called initiation schools. So what happens is, before you become a man, when you're transitioning from a boy to a man, there are a set of lessons or information that you need to know, and it's a lot of it, yet they didn't use any writing to pass this information down. So what they would do is they would create patterns, rhythmic patterns of chants, and these chants could last up to over an hour long, of things that men have to memorize. And I promise you, you will never find any recording of this, because this is considered sacred. The point is, there's no music theory to this kind of thing. So far we've looked at very abstract things with little or no rhythmic or melodic patterns to it, and now let's move to things with certain specific patterns, like the djembe beats we've been looking at before, and the shakers and the gumboots, which I've tried to theorize or try to put into a visual pattern that you can look at and try to visualize. So we can put some kind of theory to this, because the rhythms are specific and they are repetitive, and we can put them in a bar, and we can transmit information in a theoretical kind of way. Now, moving to music that I think definitely had to have some kind of theory. Let's say choirs, for example. So if you're in a choir, you need different parts. Someone is singing alto, soprano, tenor and stuff like that. You need different ways of identifying the people playing a different part, which is music theory. Moving from rhythmic to melodic instruments, if it's two or more of them being played at the same time. They need to be in the same key so that it doesn't sound horrible. So we needed a way to communicate things like keys, and this is true no matter how few the notes the instrument produces. And then there are other instruments that are seemingly simple but are not quite. For example, the ohadi, which creates two fundamental notes, but then unlike any other instrument, it also utilizes overtones, which I explained nicely in the first ohadi episode. And because it uses these overtones, the instrumentalists and singers who are accompanying the music of the ohadi are forced to utilize a scale called the Lydian scale, which I also explained nicely in the second ohadi episode. So I'm not saying that these people were thinking, you know what, let's use the Lydian scale for this. No, but I'm explaining how it's difficult to explain these things to you without using music theory. So yeah, definitely in some form of music, we need theory for explaining some African music things. Now let's move from a melodic instrument with few notes to a melodic instrument with many notes, and the one we've looked at so far is my current favorite instrument called the mbira dzavadzimu. So I'm sure looking at this note layout, it wasn't the very first note layout that happened. So I'm sure throughout the centuries we had a lot of different note layouts for the mbiras, but this note layout called the Nyamaropa tuning is the note layout that was favored by most mbira players. And because the mbira was not made by only one manufacturer, we needed a way to communicate the note layout from one mbira builder to the other mbira builder, and that method of communication is called music theory. So for the mbira dzavadzimu and similar instrument with many notes, we definitely needed music theory. This is proof. Like, there's no way you can transmit all that information without having some kind of theory. And that's how standardization became a thing. And this standardization was a good thing because now it meant that any mbira player without his mbira could just borrow another mbira from anyone and immediately be able to play it because it was standard. So besides making the mbiras standard, we also had standardization of things like dances, like the jit dance that and rhythm that we are going to look at later in this channel, and also the standardization of the actual music. For example, on this channel we've looked at Nemamsasa, Chamtengure, Tondobayana. All those are different kinds of mbira standards. Just like when you're learning jazz, you've got different kinds of jazz standards, and for you to play these standards, there should be a certain specific theory of communicating what's involved in this mbira standard, and that form of communication is called music theory. So the names like Chamtengure will be names that are telling you the chord progression, like 1 4 1 5 and all those. I'm sure if you've been following the mbira lessons, all this would be making perfect sense. And this is just the beginning. We're going to look at a lot more cultures, a lot more instruments, and a lot more genres, and we're going to make another music theory video explaining those new things that we would have learned at the time. So for you to not miss that, you know what to do. Wash out.